So this is Dream Bros video number 4. This is Bill St. Cyr with my dear friend and colleague, Darren Jakubec, Dr. Jakubec. Welcome, Jake. Good to have you.
Thanks, Bill. Good to be here. Is it 4 or 5? Might be.
I
Maybe
think
it is
this is 5. Did I
okay,
say,
5.
what did I say?
4.
Oh, I said 4. No, I think this is 5.
Wonderful.
So we had a question from our friend Marlo about shadow, dark side, and we've been thinking about that and wanted to talk about that today, and you were going to start us off.
Yes. Wow, I've got a lot of feedback on this. And what is the darkness? What does that even mean? And with respect to dreams, and just binge the Stranger Things series and the Upside Down and the darkness, and wanted to reference that for both fun and why that resonates, and just briefly why we do this. Bill and I, in our past episodes, we've said we've both found amazing insights through dreams that's helped our life, our relationships, and kind of guided us disproportionately compared to other modalities of self-reflection. So passionate enough to do this podcast and share what we've learned and bring other people into this. So there's a bit of my intro, and I want to I put this out on what does darkness mean and what does facing darkness mean. And somebody passed me a quote this morning by Mary Oliver. It's very short. It says, "In my sleep, I dreamed this poem." And the poem is, someone I loved once gave me a box full of darkness. It took me years to understand that this too was a gift. And it struck me as a beautiful poem of how we don't talk about it. It's hard to talk about. It's painful to talk about, but it comes in dreams. And it's amazing how when people share the dark parts of their dream, um, it's not entirely true, but my wife Beth told me some, and my friend Laura told me some quotes. Uh, and I think Bill would agree, dealing with death dreams, sex dreams, dreams of darkness, trauma, pain, suffering, uh, are can be particularly loaded and hard for people to deal with, but they're rewarding. And to quote my wife Beth, um, there's a quote she says that we've said before: "The dreams don't give you anything that you're not ready to handle." And like, if you had this dream, you don't necessarily need to do anything with it, but it's there. Another thing she said, the nightmares are giving us something important to see. Um, and if you see them, if you're brave enough to open up these difficult dreams, it's terrifying but worthwhile. It changes you in the outer world. How does it do that? I don't know, but it does. And I found that to be absolutely true. Um, and bringing in the Stranger Things. It's like the Upside Down is it the exact same metaphor? I mean, so much art has that, but the courage to go into the Upside Down in that Netflix series, when the kids go in there, it's like, oh
Yeah.
my God, you're going back in there again? Really? They're going back there again? There's a part of you that takes a deep breath when watching the series. Like, really? You got to go back there? But they kind of know that's where the answers are. And the Laura quote, "There's lessons that can only be learned there." Another Laura quote, my friend Laura, who's been through a lot of darkness. "Darkness loves darkness. It will show up everywhere if you don't acknowledge it." And another good quote of hers that I've liked is, Laura's gone into her dreams as well: "It's important to acknowledge our darker selves, because then we can acknowledge that we all have a darker self, and it reduces shame." Which is a topic dear to your heart, Bill. I know how people are ashamed of things and they don't talk about them and they stuff them down. And dreams bring up this really difficult subject matter that, like, you've got to be kidding me. Sometimes people don't know it, but then in the dream, and once they reveal it, they write it down and they share it with you, and you get this moment of, "Oh my god, was that actually my dream, or did I actually share that?" Because that seems very twisted or dark or painful. Yeah. So things like art in the series of the Stranger Things, like, they bring some light to it, and I've got some Stranger Things quotes, but there, I've thrown a lot at you, Bill. That's kinda where I wanted to go today. Thoughts on that?
I mean, I guess I would start by maybe distinguishing my own understanding from, and I won't pretend to be super familiar with the Jungian idea of the shadow and darkness. I guess for me, a lot of it is just repressed material. Like, just so in terms, we've been talking about language, like, darkness, it's like a word, right? Like, what is darkness?
Mhm.
And I think a lot of us grew up with ideas of like good and evil. I think of the darkness a lot, or the shadow side of people, because that was also part of what Marlo asked about, as really just being related to how within the society, the culture that we grew up in, we're taught to not talk about who we are. So all darkness isn't really dark necessarily in the sense we think of as like a bad thing. It's just like a lot of times we're really taught not to talk about who we really are for understandable reasons. Like, I think often we that have abusive parents who maybe, basically taught us to be small, or we have parents who learn to survive in this world by like being small. So there's like all this pressure in a way to not be ourselves, not be like, not just be honest about who we are. One of the things I really love about the Stranger Things series and the whole upside idea of the upside down is the whole energy and power of the upside down is built on the way that these beings in the upside down use people's shame about who they are to keep them from their power. And that
Yes.
it's the love of these kids and these mentors that they work with that teach them not to be ashamed of who they are, and in that process of not being ashamed of who they are, all of their power grows.
Yes.
And I think that's different often than the way people think about shadow and darkness. I think a lot of it is really, as a culture, I think we're scared to let people celebrate the fullness of who they are. Whether that's just, yeah, the love and light, the beauty, the brilliance of who we each are. And whether that's 11 thinking she's a monster, the whole idea through that series that's brilliant is she's kind of hinted at that she's the monster, that there's something wrong with her, that there's something wrong with her being in her powers. Um, and then with Will coming out as a gay person, he's he's scared of just being himself. And the power of the upside down, both in both of those cases, comes from making those two people feel like there's something wrong with who they are. And the more they through these relationships that develop over time, the more they realize that's not true, the less power the darkness or the shadow, the upside down, whatever we call it, has, and the more power that they have, which I love
Yes.
about the story. I just love this sort of like there's this basic kind of thread of love that runs through the entire story. That the love that these kids have for each other, the love that Hop has for Elle and expresses in very sometimes mistaken ways, but you can see it's all through love. Will's mom, and her ex, the way that who's the woman who puts the thing in the dryer and blows up the demigod
Yes.
the demidogs? I forget her name. Karen, is it? the
I think so, yeah. I can't remember, but yes.
the
The
mom, the kind of straight suburban mom who, like, it's kind of a little bit like the moment in the Harry Potter story when the redhead family's mom is like, "Don't mess with my daughter."
yes,
There's that kind of basic kind of
Molly,
love that comes from not being ashamed of your love, not
and that is the
being.
light. So when you speak of dark and awkward things to talk about, that is another definition of the light, is that love.
Yeah, if you're going to use that idea of light and darkness, I mean, I was thinking of it more in terms of shadow. So I hadn't really come in thinking so much about light and darkness. I think the whole idea of the shadow or even the darkness is really just repressed material. I think of it more as love than light, honestly. I just think of it as love.
Yeah, well,
I mean,
it doesn't fit words, right? It's feelings. It's that so yeah, hence the language we use. Is it shadow? Is it dark? Is it love? Is it light? The two, they cross over. But it's helpful to have a, like mentioned in our last episode, it's helpful to have a language around it, whatever words that you use. I want to add to the, other than the courage to go into the upside down in the series, Vecna, or number one, like the darkest character, he'll use your darkest memories or shame to try and keep you in the upside down, like to try and keep you there. And that's part of the reason people don't. It's a number of times people have said some version of, well, if I go there, I'll cry. And if I start crying, I'll never stop. And there's that sense that if I open up what's dark, I'm going to see so much dark. You can use the words of repressed material. Um, but sometimes and I've said this, sometimes it seems so incredibly dark and traumatic. Or I've said the words, I know I had a difficult childhood, but oh my God, like what is this in my dreams? It seems so much beyond what I experienced in this life in my childhood. It's like you can say that's repressed, but wow, is that, and it's not just me. Like it's sure it's me, but you see it in other people and they say, holy smokes. It's like if you open that, you're gonna get lost in there. It's like just keep that door closed. Just keep that. I love the um or like the Nietzsche quote, be careful when you deal with monsters that you don't become the monster. And Henry, number one, he actually does become the monster. And Elle thinks she's the monster, and then she faces the father figure. It's very archetypal and Freudian in a way, or young. And then she realizes, wait a second, I'm not the monster. Um, because your fear is shame that you're also the monster.
right.
And that like just being in that dialogue, it keeps you away from love, light, all the things that are uplifting in your world. Um,
I love that you bring up Henry slash Vecna slash one as one his number, because it's also like the difference between Vecna and everybody else is that Vecna's always alone.
yes,
The- so when Vecna goes off into the upside down, there's no one there to help him. I mean, there's a moment in the end there where Will tries to break through all of that. But really, the difference between the person who's most trapped in the upside down, which is really Vecna, and everybody else is that Vecna has nobody else. He has this
yes,
being called the Mind Flayer, but we don't really, there's no other person. The only other person in his life is this character, Papa, Dr. Brenner, who basically just wants to use him. And I think that's an interesting kind of addition to the conversation. Like, often what we think of as dark parts of who we are, shameful parts of who we are, really come from kind of places of isolation, not knowing that in some way all of who we are is okay. And that's not to say that parts of us can't get twisted. Like, I think, we can be hurtful, we can be abusive ourselves, right? But I think even those impulses to be abusive often come from places of utter isolation, you
Mhm.
know. And it's all on me to deal with this. So everything's a fight. And if you get in my way, there is, I think, a lot in our culture for men, particularly, of like, it's all on my shoulders. And, it's all a struggle, it's all a battle. And I think that kind of mentality creates, I mean, I guess I was going to say creates, but I think it actually comes from someone who's already isolated. It comes from a place where people are really ashamed of the fullness of who they are. There's not a kind of support for people to be in the fullness of themselves.
Yes, and if somebody has a difficult dream, if sometimes there's just no space for questioning and it's just too much and you just leave it there, right? But if there's space for questioning, I think one of the gentler questions or one of my favorite questions is there anybody with you in this dream? And amazingly, they'll say, "Yeah," and then their body language will just like, "Oh my god, I'm not alone." And they'll be able to feel a support figure, but if unfortunately, a lot of the time there isn't, and my follow-up question is, well, like in your past, did you have to face some really difficult things alone and without support? And like, who hasn't in many ways? No matter how good your parents are, they can't be there for no matter how good your community is, your society. There's always some things uh, that you were made to feel alone. And I take your point. The worst character, the darkest character in the Stranger Things series is, like you said, he's always alone. And they have this little traumatic moment from childhood, and you get the sense he had no backup. He had no father figure. There was nobody there for, or if there was, they're completely absent. Like, he put him in jail or however that worked, but which was a metaphor too. But yeah,
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I think even the quote that, from Beth about dreams don't give you what you're not ready for. It's an interesting question. I think my thinking about that has evolved over time a little bit. I mean, I think it's true. I also think it can be a little bit more complex. I think they do give us material we're not ready to be with alone.
right. Doesn't mean you have to open it up. Doesn't mean you're able to open it up, but it's there.
Yeah, just I think, to me, I've a lot defaulted back to, like, it used to be that the theory and the dream work that we did was that, like, you go into the dream and you open it up. In other words, you do like the kind of cathartic, what's the emotion there that's underneath the trauma or the darkness or whatever it is that's holding you back. And I don't know that that's always necessary. I think just the acknowledgement and sharing it and being acknowledged. So, like, telling someone the dream and just like them being with you in it is a way to open the dream in a way. Like, I don't think opening the dream has to mean we embody everything that we're scared of in the dream, whether it's
Totally.
dying or some kind of violence, or even if we're being violent in the dream, that kind of thing that we're all afraid of, like, it just becomes, one, can we just acknowledge it, that we all have abusive places from what we've been through ourselves, like, we're all carrying material that can make us want to lash out at somebody else if we're not supported. And can we tease that apart in a way and just be with, like, even that comes from somewhere. I don't think any of us are born wanting to hurt somebody else. We may be born with that capacity. Like, it could be argued we're born, but I don't think no child's born wanting to hurt somebody else. Like, we learn to deal with things in a certain way, and we end up in these patterns that become abusive and hurtful. I don't say that to excuse it. I just say it to, like, there's a way out of that. Actually love that Will, in the Upside Down story and the Stranger Things story, tries to reach out to Vecna, tries to say, like, you don't have to do this. Like, I see
Yes.
you. I see what you've been through. I understand it. You could choose this other path. He
And it's
doesn't.
not your fault. He
Not, is
uses
that what
those
he
words. So
says? Is that what he
yeah,
says?
yeah,
Thank you for
this
that.
wasn't your fault,
It's
which is
not
a
your
great thing when working with dreams to point out, and people will assume this is all their fault. And it's like, nowhere in this dream do I see evidence that anything's your fault here. And it's amazing the resistance people have to that. People love to blame themselves for things. They're
hence the cycle of what we call darkness or shadow, right? Like the
right,
more you blame yourself, the less it feels okay to talk to anybody about. And
right,
then everybody's walking around with these stories of feeling like there's something wrong with them,
right.
ashamed to talk about it. And then there's no way out. It becomes kind of self fulfilling because the more you carry it, the more likely you are. My worst moments in my life, the moments that I'm kind of rightfully ashamed of, are those moments that I felt like everything was on me. All the pressure was
Yes.
on me. And the more that I've had space to feel my own relationship with consciousness or God, if you will, even the more I feel people in my life who, like, I don't have to do this alone, the easier it is for me when those darker tendencies come up because I can be really controlling, like I can get to a place where I really, my sweet kind of like wanting to help people, being a therapist can become very much like, you need to change, like I don't really go there anymore, but I know that place inside myself, I know that place. It's no longer a dark place for me because it's not in the shadows.
Yeah.
Like I know why I felt alone. I know why I did the things that I did. And so it takes the power away from those places. Whereas most people think, well, I have anger or I have, things that are kind of maybe genuinely like shameful ideas. So I should hold them even tighter. And then I think the more people hold them, and we're saying the dreams don't really, the dreams aren't gonna like, because in a way, like we store those repressed memories in parts of our brain that we kind of block out. But the dreams are like, no, we can slip right past those blocks. We can slip right past those gates.
And they do.
And they do.
They do. And people take pills. It's like the number of people, like, I'm still a practicing medical doctor. People will say, well, I need my pills or the dreams will come back. I'll need my bed. And you're like, it's that, sure, sure. But if you ever want to open up those dreams and just to backtrack a bit, there's one thing is to have the dream and to acknowledge the dream. It's another thing to think you need to do something with it, which is to open it as a therapist or explore it, which you have choice. You don't need to go there. But I would argue, and hence Beth and Laura and myself, that just to acknowledge that you had that dream, and whether you write it down, if you don't acknowledge it, chances are it's coming back in some way, shape, or form. And one of the ways through that is to not be alone with it, or even to do this podcast. I said, well, Bill, I want to do it more than one because you'll keep me in check and I'll keep you in check somehow, or two are greater than one somehow. One of us will get off track. The other one will pull back. I'd watched a little bit of the Fellowship of the Ring too, and I realized like there's something beautiful about that fellowship.
Yeah.
We keep each other in check, and
Yeah.
something greater can come from it when you go forward as a group. There's something you said just totally fits amongst my favorite quotes that fits with this. There's that Nietzsche quote that sits with me that fits totally with this. Whoever fights monsters should see that in the process, he does not become a monster. And if you gaze long enough into the abyss will gaze back into you. And for me, that abyss thing is like that self-shame thing that like I am the abyss. I am shameful. I am that I have done these dark things, or I have had these thoughts that will lead me down this process, and it becomes a dialogue with the abyss in a way, which is just there's no light there. You're alone in that dialogue, um, and it spirals.
Yeah. I mean, I think that can happen in a lot of ways. I think it can happen with trauma work. I think, where just the whole focus becomes on the trauma, right? Like your whole identity starts to get built around the trauma. I
Reminds me
mean,
of your dream on the trauma, trauma, trauma. Didn't you dream of that book you were writing with that group where
I'm
the
not
title of the
remembering
book?
it exactly.
Oh, there was
Trauma, trauma, trauma.
yeah, you told me a dream, Bill, that the dream group you were with, was writing books, and you and Sue were facilitating the writing, and you told me you had a dream, and I don't have it exactly correct here, but I think the title of the book was Trauma, Trauma, Trauma in your dream. It was you get the gist, even if I have it a
Ye-
little off base here,
yeah,
just like,
yeah.
when do you just stop? Where's the light in that? And it's like to acknowledge that, okay, there it is, but then to have others pull you out of that and to say, okay, yes, acknowledge it, but don't keep staring at that abyss over and over, or keep going to therapy. That's part of the working with dreams, or these other modalities have shown up other than traditional counseling, because you can keep focusing on the trauma as opposed to the light on the other side of the trauma. And
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think even that it comes from a place. I mean, I like what you're saying about having people to pull you out of it, because I think it's a very isolated place. I think of a lot of things that even what you're talking about in terms of the fellowship. It's like it's relationship, right? Like we
right.
need relationship to know that like we don't have to. In a way, we can trust the trauma to move through and find our way out. But I think when we're isolated, any practice, whether it's dream work or trauma work or any kind of work, we can become kind of over identified with the thing we're doing rather than with ourselves.
Yes.
And I think one of the things I love about dreams and the way that we work about with dreams is like people can find their own way through how much they need to do trauma work or not. They can find, and I think our psyche will prompt us if we're doing something and we're over identifying with it in a way that's beyond who we really are. And again, I think often that comes from a place of isolation. So I think if we can break the isolation and we can sort of make space for people, because I don't think our bodies want it. The whole point of dissociation is to help us to get to a place where we're not dissociated.
We're
It's a
not
survive.
outside of
It's
our bodies. We're actually in our bodies. We can actually feel. We can actually love.
yes,
We can actually
yes,
have
yes.
joy.
Yeah.
Feel that.
And when you're trapped in a thing around trauma, you're not really healing the trauma. Like if you're identifying with the trauma, it's another form of dissociation. It's not who I am. It's an experience that I've had. And I need to be in relationship to that experience.
Yes.
But I neither have to conquer it nor identify with it. It's not who I am. It's an experience that I've had. And it does become I mean, I guess all experience to some extent becomes a part of who we are. But I think what's great about dreams, if I can mention one of your dreams lately, like you had that, wasn't it a plane crash? And then there's all these doorways, right?
Yes.
So dreams give you both the crash, they give you whatever that crash is for each of us, and they give us a doorway through. In your case, they give you many, many doorways. I guess they give everybody many, many doorways, right? Like,
Right. Mm.
because we each have to find out what's the doorway for us. There's no prescription of do trauma work for this X amount of time or do this for this amount of time. And then it's all just about what happens when you go through the doorway. What happens when you acknowledge the crash and you know that there's a doorway out in the case of your dream.
I can show you my picture. Where is it?
Yeah, I would love to see that.
Where's my
You
picture? It's
sent it
gotta
to
be
me. I
your
love it. You
I
should share
sent
it
it
for
to me.
sure.
It's got to be around here somewhere. One second.
we can we can edit this out if it takes too long for you to find it. We
It's
can.
not going to take too long. It's right here. Don't edit it out, Bill. There it is. Let me see if I back it up right there. There's my dream. I was going through doors, going through more doors, and going through more doors. And one of the doors I went through, I was just wandering through a plane crash and just went out that door too. And to me, I've gotten so used to, I think, traumatic things that, well, it's just another door. Like the feeling in the dream was, okay, here's just another door. It wasn't surprising to me um, to have that door, but and you know me, I've had plane crash dreams in the past and multiple actually, and it's like horrifying and terrifying and hitting the ground and I woke up very frazzled from those and needing to process emotions. But this is just okay. It feels like if I go through this door, there's going to be more doors. And reminds me of a Rumi quote. He said, "Yeah, I was knocking on the door, and then I realized I was already inside," or something like that. You can get focused on the doors too. Like anything can become a distraction.
Yeah.
Uh, uh Also reminded me of a Laura quote. She said, "Darkness loves darkness." And it will show up everywhere if you don't acknowledge it. It's kind of the same thing. Like you can keep focusing. There's a Papa quote too from that I quite liked, which is kind of an evil guy in Stranger Things, but he says, season 4, he says to 11, "If you go too fast, I'm afraid you will be lost in the darkness." And I could kind of relate to that. I thought that was a, a wise quote. I thought that was a wise quote. Um, Even though he's an evil character, sometimes evil characters have
Well, the
wise
thing
quotes.
is, he doesn't listen to that himself, right? Like he
No,
pushes her too fast. That's the whole one. He's doing it for all the wrong reasons, and yeah, he's pushing her. He's not letting her find her own way with her gifts. He's using her gifts the whole time and always pushing her. I think what's lovely about dreams is you get to feel into what's the doorway for me today. Is all is the doorway for me to go toward the plane crash? Is the doorway for me to go out of the plane crash? What do I need today? I think in terms of the repressed material, whether you think of it as repression or shadow or darkness or dissociation, I think as a practitioner, a general rule of thumb can just be, is there something you need to see that's holding you back? And as soon as you're not held back, then there's no reason to go back there. I mean, you can go back as often as you want, right? But it's really on a very practical level. Is there something you're trying to do and you're tripping yourself up and the dream's showing you, oh, there's something that's hard to look at, that's running you. It's kind of like the upside down, because another one of the things I love about the Stranger Things series is that most people don't even understand that there's this power in the world, right? They don't understand that there's this whole other world right beside them that's
right,
actually affecting them.
right,
And it's like, yeah, they have to go in a lot, but they only have to go in until they don't have to go in. They only
right,
have to go in when there's a problem. They only have to go in when there's somebody to rescue. They only have to go in until they don't have to go in anymore. And I think that's a pretty good model in a way of like, yeah, if you're doing great, you don't need to go in. Just keep going. And this is the thing, like the more you open to love, the more you shine the light, the more you're also going to notice is like, oh, there's something in that corner that I never saw before, because my light now like opens up this much more.
I lost you. I lost you, Bill.
There we go.
You're back.
I went into the darkness.
Dead.
uh, what was I saying? Oh, yeah, like the bigger you go, like you're going to run into some of those. it's not necessarily a bad thing. Like a lot of times people will be growing and they'll have what they think of as a bad dream. And I'll be like, no, you're growing. And so, it creates this kind of new level of vulnerability or something that like you have to face again but it's on a whole nother level. It's not the same thing all over again.
And one of the things I like to do with people with dreams early on is please try not to use the word good and bad. Please, because it's just a reason to bring in shame almost. It's like, "Oh, it's bad. I'm bad.
It's a
This is
bad
a bad
dream.
thing. There's a
I had a bad dream.
bad dream," as opposed to I like, a couple different ways of wording it language. You'd fallen into a pattern that's no longer serving you, or Sue's language, sometimes she'll say, like, "You needed to do this at some point in your life in order to survive." Or this response needed to happen, but you don't need that anymore. And how do we get away from this pattern? And it's hard, like it's not for me to say that, but if I people will say, well, how do I do this? And the best thing, or how do I become a facilitator, or how do I work with other people's dreams? And pretty much universally, we'll all say, well, start with working with your own dreams. Because if you can't find the way out of the darkness in your own dreams, it's going to be really hard for you to do that for other people. It's if I, as a doctor, am still smoking, it's gonna be hard to counsel other people on how to quit smoking, right?
Yeah.
You can go with cliches and cliches, and for me, how have I found the way out of my own? Because I was consumed with very dark dreams for a while, so I kept in touch with you. I keep in touch with others. I texted 10 people, probably somewhat inappropriately this morning, but they all answered. They all had something to say about, like, I don't usually text these people, and I try to stay off social media, and there's slow responses. So I just fanned out, but people gave me amazing replies. And in the past, how have I found my way out? I personally have used music, and music has come in my dreams over and over, uh, to pull me out, it seems. And in Stranger Things, there's a Max quote, season 5. Music has a way of finding you, even in the darkest of places. Uh, Beautiful Max quote. And then she goes on to realize, like, oh, I realized I actually didn't even need the music. It was just kind of within me and the relationship. And so kind of she moves beyond music, but music was a way to get me to feel, to get me to see some light when I was in my darkest of places, for sure. It was one of my lights when I didn't see light. But if I can't see it, I'd work with other people and I'd focus on the dark parts of their dream. And I remember somebody's really traumatic, I mean, person had a completely hellish childhood. And I've mentioned this before. I think that they had this very long dream, just horrible things happening. And at one point, she meets a woman in the kitchen who just grabs her and says, "None of this should have ever happened to you." And I just held on to that moment. That was the one bit of light in 3 pages of traumatic dreams. And if I can't see that light, like I can guide her dark, 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 because I only see dark. So how do we once again, dark and light are really awkward terms. You can use trauma, you can use shadow, you can use um and I've got a I've always been a religious searcher and spiritual searcher, and that I've had a few friends in the past who've used what I like to call God language, or just like tried to just see the light without acknowledging dark. And I've really had trouble. People say, mostly Christian language around where I am, and how I just couldn't go there. I couldn't relate without, even though what they're saying may be absolutely true and absolutely true for them, I couldn't relate without almost acknowledging the darkness part to see the light part. Uh,
I mean, I love what you're saying about the good and bad thing. I think it's actually super important. It's why I tend to not use dark and light language because people tend to associate light with good and dark with bad,
yes.
as opposed to like, why can't dark just be like the night? Like, there's nothing inherently wrong with the night versus the day. I think the unconscious, I don't think darkness it can be associated with the mystery. It can be associated with dreams, for example, that come to us in the darkness, that come to us in the night. But I love what you're saying about like this not the good and bad isn't necessarily helpful for most people. And even the quote bad things that we've been through, yeah, I mean, I don't want to diminish what they've been through, but like thinking about them in terms of like painful experiences versus bad experiences, or I mean, I think there can be a lot of language that kind of mystifies things in a negative way, as opposed to, yeah, can we just talk about what's happening in our lives? Can we talk about, can we not pretend that we all haven't been through what we've been through?
Right.
I think it would be a different world if there was space to explore not just our dreams, but the experiences that we've all been through.
Right. And just I mentioned this briefly, but as it plays out with me with my medical doctor hat, I just talked to somebody and said, "Well, I need my prescription for my sleeping pill. You know, otherwise my mind won't turn off or those dreams will come back." And I'm like, "Sure, if that's gonna help you function, but it I just wanna plant the seed that you might have a far more fulfilling life if you learn how to be with that as opposed to numb it out because they're coming back. Then they'll say they're coming back every night if I don't take these pills. So we in the medical profession and the pharmaceutical industry at our worst have been complicit. Like, yeah, let's peel these away. And like as everything else, to a point in time, if you have no option, you're at a point where you don't have space to deal with these things. But if you remotely have the capacity to not pill it away, likely on the other end is a more fulfilling life. But I don't want to sound condescending to tell people that, but as much as I can, open that door and say, you know, you're having these for a reason. But I have seen them go away, and people who the number of people who come to me with one dream or one traumatic dream, and I've heard it from you and I've heard it from others. There's just a dream that with a difficult subject matter, they just release that dream to you. You don't even do much with it, and they say it's amazing. It's never come back. Like they didn't do anything, but yet they've done something, and like they've trusted you in a way. They've trusted somebody else to share it with. They're not alone with it, to use the other words. And amazingly, the cycle is broken, and there's this level of freedom that's hard to put to words. The whole experience is hard to put to words because what the heck just happened there? Why do they feel more free? Why are they not afraid to go to sleep anymore? Amazingly common. And I know you've had this, Bill. I know, like,
Yeah. I mean, I think again, I think people are taught, this is like people are taught in 100 different ways to pill their experience. And I don't think it's condescending to say, to offer, you know, like I think it's condescending if I say, I know a better way to do it. You should do it this way. But I don't think we have to be condescending. I think it's okay to say, you know, do what you need to do to survive, to get through. And there is also this other possibility. And that's an offering. It's not like some condescension. It's an offering. You know, if it's helpful to you, I have an offering of something that could maybe help you beyond just getting through the night.
yes,
And I think it's one of the things in our culture that we don't do. I think, or our society, whatever language you want to use around that. Like, we're taught that things. I was talking about this in a class the other day. There's a prayer that I was brought up with that I think of sometimes. It's actually the language of the prayer is in reflection of something beautiful, but I think of it. It has this dark side to it too. If you use it the other way, it goes something along the lines of "As it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen." Now that's in reference to love and grace and God and all those good things, but I think the shadow side of that is people think that what is now will always be,
yes,
you know?
yes. If I start crying, I will never stop. Amazing how common that is. If you just ask people, it's like, if I go there, it's gonna pull me in.
Yeah, I think people are scared. I mean, if you've never been in a place, I mean, for me, it was like when my brother died, it was 5 years before I I mean, literally 5 years before I let myself cry about it. I let myself have that grief. And I was with someone I felt could handle it. It was the first time I was with someone who I felt, "Oh, this person is not gonna freak out on me." I didn't think that consciously, but they made space for me to be with my feelings. They were enough in their own feelings that I could be in my feelings around it for the first time in 5 years.
You're not
But
alone.
yeah, yeah. But most people are alone with it. Most of us are not taught how we're taught to get by and move on. It's a different version of the pill, right? Like you just move on. I
At
was
a
brought
cost,
up. What did you say?
generally at a cost. At a cost to your emotional well-being.
But we don't know that.
We don't know that.
We
You're just
don't know that.
surviving.
All we see is like what we think of as this bad thing, this bad feeling of pain, and it hurts. It's definitely not a fun feeling. It's not a joyful
No,
feeling, but we're taught that it's bad. Or for me, there was also anger. Like I was angry that my brother had died. And well, that's certainly a bad feeling if you use that kind of good, bad language, as opposed to like just having someone who's like, well, of course you're angry. Why wouldn't like what I've really needed was someone to just be like, "Yeah, of course you're angry. Some things changed that you didn't wanna change," and that anger is part of your life force wanting to be expressed that's gonna actually help you to keep living to the fullest, keep living in a way that's healthy. But we don't do that in our culture. We repress all that anger, we repress all that grief. We devalue feelings, we devalue life.
yeah, the pain and the sadness, and I remember having a dream where it just like I felt everything and I woke up and I was angry. It's like the dreams are trying to get me to feel every feeling on the spectrum. And I thought, well, yeah, they probably are. And I've said to people, it's like, well, this is a painful dream, but like I don't want to push you, but because you felt this pain, or I'll get them to bring a body language to it, or somatic, like increasingly, I think most dream workers do. It's like, okay, can you bring a body awareness to this? And so many times it's the heart, but oftentimes it's not. I'll say, if you can acknowledge the pain, the opposite of pain is love in some way. And what does that even mean? And it sounds kind of trite, but like if you can feel pain, you can feel love. And already even saying those words, who the hell am I to say that? But if you can feel sorrow, you can feel
Say it,
joy.
brother, say it.
But it happens to be true. But if I can say I don't really understand because I don't, but it tends to be true that people that they can. Oh, it reminds I gotta go into the. I got another quote with Stranger Things related to
I
this,
knew you had
like
a
the
quote.
opposite, which is the number of times A Wrinkle in Time has come up, like the book, the Madeleine L'Engle, L'Engle. How do you say it en français? A proper quote. But my friend Denise, who's a nurse here, sent me this. She said, "Maybe you have to know the darkness before you can appreciate the light." And that's a Madeleine L'Engle quote. Maybe you have to know the darkness before you can appreciate the light. And so that book comes up in Stranger Things, and it's just funny how, yeah, was it number 1 or Vecna says, "Yeah, I love that book." It's it fits with the theme of what we're talking about.
Yeah,
I'm kinda going all over the place here, Bill, but it's a great
I
quote.
I get it. I get it. Yeah. It's a practice to stay with what's true, to stay with what you feel, to like go into the unknown, to go into the darkness, to go into the shadow in a way that's manageable. Like to know that that love and pain, like you don't feel emotional pain unless there's a loss of love. Like I don't even know if they're the opposite or if they're the same thing, or maybe that they're opposite in the sense that they're flip sides of a coin, right? They're both. There's no emotional pain unless there's love. I wouldn't have had so much grief about my brother if he didn't mean anything to me. If he didn't mean anything to me, I could have done what everybody wanted me to do, which was to just move on to the next thing.
which is what people we've talked about just watching the Stranger Things, how many people in the movie, even living in the town, don't even seem to acknowledge that there's something going on. It's like such a small minority of the town want to acknowledge that, there's something there's a big rift in the town. There's,
Even when there's like this, like broken earth all the way through in two
yeah,
different directions. Yeah. I mean, I
how
think
few
it,
people will actually acknowledge it, how few people want to talk about it, because, yeah, to talk about it for all of these quotes, all of these well, I can't go further without doing the Carl Jung quote, where is it? "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." That's just was such a great Carl Jung quote, even if I've excuse me if I've misquoted some of these, but it's that, "No, everything's fine, just keep on keeping on, and let's not talk about that darkness. Let's not talk about what's underneath everything."
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's what we're taught. I mean, I think even what's happening here politically in the US, I mean, one of the most intense parts of what's happening is they're telling us not to believe what we're seeing with our very own eyes around some of these shooting videos. Like they're right in front of our eyes. This thing is happening. We're being told, no, no, that's not what's happening. And that's kind of an extreme example of it. But I think that kind of mentality, there's a reason that kind of consciousness is running the country right now. That doesn't come out of nowhere, that we have a government right now where they're just point blank telling you, like, do not believe what you see. Thank God there's video evidence. Otherwise, they would be able to get away with it all. I mean, they may still get away with it all, but I think it goes right back to the experiences that people have. Like, don't talk about your brother's death. Don't talk about the abuse that when you went through. Don't talk about mental health issues. Don't talk about the fact that you're sad or scared. Those are bad, bad feelings. Don't be scared. Don't be.
just to point out, I am in Canada, I do have my different perspective when you say "we," but I've it's hard not to watch the news and see what's going on everywhere. We've all got our own version of not acknowledging what's dark, societally, politically,
Yeah. No,
globally, personally.
yeah. Yeah, no, I appreciated hearing Carney speak the other day, Prime Minister Carney speak about how there's been this world order and we've kind of pretended it's all been okay when kind of we know that's not true. It it's there everywhere you go, really. Like I appreciated that he acknowledged we as a Canadian government, we've been pretending that this is a certain thing that it's really not. And we're not pretending right now, which I appreciated. I think that's a kind of courage, that we need.
Yeah,
But it's
it's
not just on that level. It's not going to change on that level unless, as people, we have the courage to be with challenging things in our lives. We need
yeah,
to build not just a different. I mean, for those of us who want to change things, it's not going to change unless we change the society and the culture that underpins all of that.
and
Mm,
it takes courage to do that.
takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of and I think it takes love. I think it takes being with other people who are like, yeah, no, you're not actually crazy to want to grieve what you've been through, or you're not crazy to be angry about that thing that happened to you. And we can be with you in that grief and in that pain. And we can also help if you're worried about going in too far, like you said, we can help pull you out. You don't have to be afraid of drowning because you're not alone. We're not going to let you drown. You're afraid of that anger. It's okay. You can be that angry with me and I'll make sure you don't hurt yourself or hurt somebody else. that's what I love about the Stranger Things. Like again and again and again, they come back to each other. Like even the competition. God, I'm terrible at these characters' names. Steve and who's the other one that's like they have this constant competition for Nancy, right? And
Yes.
but in the end, their love for each other overcomes that. Like in the end, their love for each other sort of like passes the competition that they feel. Every single thing that happens that again, as they let go of whatever proving that they feel they have to do, themselves for Nancy or proving themselves for their parents or proving themselves, it's like, well, what if we all didn't have to prove ourselves in that way? What if we could actually kind of struggle through this together and know that, like, yeah, we're all struggling and there's love there in the struggle. There's love there in the darkness. There's love there in the shadows. And we can hold that for each other. You're not going to drown in all of that.
Mhm.
It's going to be hard. It's going to be hard moments. Like in the show, they lost Barb, right? Like Barb never came back. I was always like hoping, like, maybe Barb will come back. Will came back. Maybe Barb will come back.
Yes. That some people don't come back is huh. Got sent another quote this morning as I asked people about the darkness. Somebody sent me Rumi's always ahead of the curve. Rumi says, "If everything around you seems dark, look again. You may be the light. If everything around seems dark, look again. You may be the light." But what a wonderful quote, and like kind of mind blowing in a way. But like, what's best about it is that somebody sent me that, just by talking about darkness. And someone else said, I amazingly feel good today after talking about the darkness. They sent in the text. Yeah, I kind of woke up really depressed, but I feel pretty good now. It's funny that. Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting. Yeah, it's a practice, right? Because you can get lost in it all. You can get lost in talking about how bad things are. You can get lost in
It's like watching the news. Like, it's true, but at which point how do you get strategic? How do you do something?
where does it become doom scrolling? They call it
Right,
doom scrolling. Like, at
right.
what point? It's like the other day, I was like, okay, I saw this shooting in Minneapolis 15 times now. I don't think I need to see it again. I'm not
Right.
turning away, I'm turning toward, okay, what can I do? What do I need to do? How do I bring love to this conversation? How do I be with other people that are struggling with what's happening?
We'll do a podcast, Bill. We'll do a YouTube. We'll do
Yeah. Yeah. This is
you
part of
know,
it, right? Like, this is part of
'cause what
why we
can't be
called
like
it
it
the
as
Dream
well.
Bros. It's like we need people in our lives. We need people. It is too much. I think it's too much to process on your own. Whether you're talking about what's happening in the world or just like talking about what has happened in people's lives. It's too much to do on our own.
Why
Dream.
it's good to have art. It's good to have music. It's good to have because it's too much. They play with the metaphors or us playing with the Stranger Thing metaphor. I mean, who knows whether we're right or wrong. It's not, but it's helped me process and know that I'm not alone. And you can talk about the Harry Potter or the Lord of the Rings or so many other series which mimic reality and teach you lessons. What are the ones you've watched that you said,
What's the separated one? I forget what it's called, where they do this incision in people's brain to separate themselves. What's it called? I'm so terrible with these sorts of
I haven't
things.
watched that one.
I'll post it in the show notes. It's an Apple. It's about like people go into work and when they're at work, they go through this thing and it triggers this part of the brain that they don't know. They have like an innie and an outie. They have like the person at work, and that is their own sort of like identity and being. And then when they leave work, they're a different person. They've like done this operation in their brain, so they're two different people on some level. Obviously, they're not, but again, it's a playing around with that split between the way we split, the way we like act a certain way in parts of our lives, and then we go home and we're a different person.
or dissociate being the yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. Sorry, I can't remember the name of that one. I'm terrible
That's
with that
okay.
kind of thing.
Anybody that's watching, yeah, they'll know. What do you think, Bill? I think we should do an episode 2 on this. I think I think there's so much, and I'm gonna get so much feedback. If I got this much feedback in such a short time, just literally in an hour before the show, if I got
I
this
would
much feedback, I think we should do another one of these.
Okay, I would love that. It would be good to get some specific feedback and keep going.
Excellent. But I'm
Let me
feeling
see.
the need to wrap up. Is this an okay place to
I
wrap up?
think this is a great place to wrap up.
This has been fun, Bill.
So, as always, if you're enjoying this, please consider pushing the like and subscribe button. Consider putting a comment below or sharing this with a friend. It helps us tremendously as we're all trapped in this YouTube logarithm, algorithm, whatever you call it.
Not the upside down.
Yeah, well, maybe it is. It is might be part of the upside down, but
Not it.
anyway, good to be here with you all. If you have any questions, post in the comments or send it to us. And yeah, we'll pick it up in another video. Thanks, Jake. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Bill.